Today I will be exploring the difference in the thought process of two civil rights leaders and their concepts of what would have made a thriving African American society. I'll be talking about W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. We can see these two mentioned a lot together because W.B. Du Bois openly opposed Booker T. Washington's ideology and created an entire movement to go against it. Although in the end they were able to see how their thought processes could work together, the disagreement shows the different cultures, temperatures, and lifestyles of African Americans in the South and the North of this country, and why you will often see what seems like a beef between leaders, which usually ended up with coming together of minds. Booker T. Washington was born a slave in Southwest Virginia on April 5, 1856, and died November 14, 1915. Although we know these dates now, Booker T. Washington never knew his birthday or year of his birth. This information came to light after his death. So in 1881, he became head of what is now the Tuskegee Institute. It started in one room. He invested by buying land and having students help build actual buildings for the school. The school at this time of inception focused on teaching the students there to be teachers of trades and farming, to help become educators at other African American colleges throughout the South. The institute later grew to become Tuskegee University. Booker T. Washington, throughout his life, was very invested in the education of African Americans in America and them being an important part of society. In 1895, Booker T. Washington delivered a speech, the Atlanta Exposition speech. In this speech, delivered at Piedmont Park in Atlanta, he proclaimed to the predominantly white audience that amidst all the strikes that were going on at the time, instead of using immigrants that were coming into America, they should utilize the black Americans who were there and had the skills to do the jobs already. He used the statement, "separate fingers on the same hand," signifying that even though segregated, we could still all work together for the same cause, which is America, where we all live. He also, in this speech, spoke of blacks' loyalty and service to white people in the South, and that if oppressed, it may cause an uprising. Many of the white people at this time felt his speech, and he was praised and often sought after for race relations. W.E.B. Du Bois was an American sociologist and historian. He was born in Massachusetts, February 23, 1868. And died August 27, 1963. He graduated from Berlin and Harvard University, where he was the first African American to earn a doctorate. He became a teacher and an activist that strongly opposed all oppression of African Americans. His thesis was even entitled "Suppression of the African Slave Trade in the United States of America, 1638 to 1871. Du Bois used to support separate but equal, but after doing field research in Philadelphia for one of his books, studying the data, he changed his mind and felt integration was key for the equality for our people in this country. He directly opposed Booker T. Washington's Atlanta Exposition speech, renaming it the Atlanta Compromise, saying it was trying to make African Americans stay in an inferior position. He also opposed the stress Booker T. Washington put while teaching trades and farming, believing that liberal arts and more academic curriculum would create leaders and would be more beneficial for the people. He created a movement called the Niagara Movement, which they stated they refused to allow the impression to remain that the Negro American assents to inferiority, is submissive under oppression, and apologetic before insults. After seeing how lynching in the South was done relentlessly and almost as a sport, and having no respect for African American men, he didn't see Booker T. Washington's movement of being nonviolent and working together as second-class citizens a working model for obtaining our equality. Booker T. Washington's stance on being a second-class citizen and not focusing on voting and rights, but focusing on education and work, he felt would give them control of the market and money coming from the South. And with this, they would be able to demand rights and equality in the future. But I think that his way of trying to appeal to his oppressors instead of directly fight them, also focusing on what was important in the South, which was agriculture, the North didn't really see his vision. He did have a lot of affluent people who helped to fund HBCUs in the South, and even after his death, gave scholarships, grants, and foundations dedicated to African Americans going to college. The NAACP was founded in 1909 on the back of the Niagara Movement. It was an interracial group that started it along with W.E.B. Du Bois, and they openly fought against lynching and for voting rights for black people. And they are still around today, fighting for equality in the United States. W.E.B. Du Bois later said that he was regretful for how critical he was of Booker T. Washington and his writing, because as he saw later, there was a need for both. It was a need for the trade and the farming, and it was also a need for liberal arts. And together, they were fighting for the same thing, for the education and advancement of Black people in America, of African Americans. And, kind of that opposition at the time may have not been so necessary. However, going into the future, their efforts and their work was a catalyst to what brought about the civil rights movement and the education of some of our future leaders. So, we have to thank both of them for that. Thank you. Like, share, and subscribe.